Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special National Science Week event, Innovating in Early Childhood, using technology for equity and STEM learning, hosted by the Faculty of Education at Monash University and presented by members of the Conceptual PlayLab team. My name is Amanda Berry and I'm Deputy Dean for Research in the Faculty of Education, and I'm a Professor in STEM education, science, technology and mathematics education, which makes it doubly special for me to be hosting this evening's event, showcasing this important research in STEM in early childhood from our faculty. And we are absolutely thrilled to see so many registrations and welcome everyone who is tuning in from across the globe. So to begin, I'd like to acknowledge the lands from which I am speaking this evening and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. I'd like to specifically acknowledge that the Wiradjuri and Boonwurrung people, communities of the Kulin Nation, are the ongoing custodians of the lands on which Monash University now stands, and we pay our respects through our research, our teaching and our learning to the Wiradjuri and Boonwurrung elders and their past, present and future communities. And I also encourage you, if you haven't already, to write into the YouTube chat whereabouts you're zooming in from, which I know is many different countries across the world. And if you know about the traditional lands from which you're zooming in from, to include that as well in the YouTube chat. So tonight you're going to be hearing about the work of the Conceptual PlayLab at Monash with our three wonderful speakers, Laureate Professor Marilyn Fleer, who is Director of the Conceptual PlayLab. And hi, Marilyn, you can give us a wave. Dr. Prabhat Rai, who's a Senior Research Fellow in the PlayLab. Here he is, smiling and waving. And Sharon Mccormick, a current PhD student working in the PlayLab as well. Hi to Sharon. So you're going to experience a journey into the world of the work of the PlayLab through the presentations of these terrific speakers, and also have an opportunity to interact with our speakers following their presentations. So you can put questions and comments into the YouTube comments section, but you'll need to be logged into YouTube to be able to do so. You should find those instructions in your email or at the top of the YouTube chat. We also encourage you to use Twitter to tweet throughout the presentation, and you'll see the hashtags on the bottom of the slides, and also you can tag Monash Education and Marilyn Fleer. So as I said, we have so many different registrations for this event. Initially, this was going to be an in-person event, but now we can reach out to all corners of the globe at all times of day and night. We have over 400 people who have registered, and we have countries including our Nordic neighbours, Norway, Finland, Denmark, across to the UK and Ireland, across the Pacific to Samoa and New Zealand, into Asia of China. We also have South American countries, Brazil. So these are just to name a few of those countries, and I'm sure you can see in the chat where people are all zooming in from as well. We also have a range of representation from Australian universities and departments of education in Australia. So welcome to everyone. And also special thanks to Senator Bridget McKenzie, who's on YouTube tonight. Lovely to have you with us too. So as you can see, a very comprehensive representation, and just wonderful to have the richness of all the different participants we have. So before I introduce the speakers, I'd like to say a few words related to the significance of this work in STEM education that the team is engaged in. Internationally, and particularly here in Australia, we know that we're facing a challenge to motivate young people's engagement, participation, and aspiration in STEM. This is not only to meet the demand for STEM workers in our community, but also to build a strongly STEM literate society. And we know that that journey of engagement, participation, and aspiration must begin early in childhood. Very young children form impressions of themselves that can shape their future decision-making. And that's where the work being done in early childhood areas of STEM and in the Faculty of Education through the PlayLab becomes so very important, and has been recognised internationally of the very special work that they're doing. So the presentations that you'll hear tonight are snapshots of early findings from the Conceptual PlayLab, And it'll be your opportunity to hear about this cutting edge work that's happening. And also, if you visit the PlayLab website, and I'm sure we will give you the website address for you to do that, you'll also find a host of other resources that you can access, including videos and working papers. You can also check out our social media in relation to the PlayLab. For instance, Twitter. There's a private Facebook for educators, newsletters, and a YouTube channel. So many resources from a very, very special group of people. So now let me introduce our three speakers, because I'm sure that you are keen to begin to hear from them. So first up, and I'll just ask you to put on your videos as I introduce you, Laureate Professor Marilyn Fleer. Thanks, Marilyn. And Marilyn holds the Foundation Chair of Early Childhood Education and Development at Monash University, and she was awarded the very prestigious 2018 Kathleen Fitzpatrick Laureate Fellowship by the Australian Research Council. She's also a former president of the International Society of Cultural Historical Activity Theory Research, ISCAR. And Marilyn's research focuses obviously in the areas of early childhood science, engineering, and technologies, with particular attention on digital visual methodology. Thanks, Marilyn. And then next you're going to be hearing from Dr. Prabhat Rai, and he's going to turn on his video now so that he can wave and you can see him. And he's the Senior Research Fellow in the Conceptual PlayLab, and his work is focused on digital educational experiments using the conceptual play world to create motivating conditions for children's STEM concept learning in their early years in home and community settings. And Prabhat completed his PhD research as a Felix Scholar at the University of Oxford and has subsequently had various academic positions in India and Bhutan, including working in rural and remote communities. His fields of expertise are play pedagogy, continuous professional development of teachers, cultural historical theory, and assessment. Thanks, Prabhat. And our third speaker tonight is Sharon Mccormick. And here's Sharon waving to you now. And Sharon is a PhD candidate in the Faculty of Education with an ARC Laureate Research Scholarship in the Conceptual PlayLab. And before joining Monash, Sharon has worked for 30 years as an educational leader across a range of educational sectors, organisations and institutions, particularly in primary education. And her doctoral research explores how conceptual play worlds for families can be conducted using social media and digital tools as a means to support those families in providing the developmental conditions for young children's STEM concept formation. So now, you know, we have pretty amazing speakers, and I'm sure you're keen to start hearing from them. And it's my pleasure now to hand over to Professor Marilyn Fleer. Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you very much, Mandy. And it's wonderful to be here tonight and to be part of a team that's going to be presenting to you. So I want to begin by, first of all, acknowledging that I'm zooming in from the Bunurong lands. And I also want to take us forward. I'm just waiting for control. Yes, got control of the screen. Wonderful. And I also want to acknowledge the fabulous team that actually underpins some of the work that we're sharing tonight. We have a much broader team than this, but these are very important people that have been part of the work we're doing that you can see on the screen. But there's also involved in the PlayLab has been our wonderful STEM champions, and I just want to do a little shout out for these amazing educators. So we have Belinda O'Day, we have Cecilia Crocker, Kim Gardner, Christy Edwards, Tiana Gilman, Victoria Barbara, Fee Morrison, Lynn Kerr, Stephanie Hoy, who we're going to hear from towards the end of my part of the presentation, Lisa Raffalo. And I also want to make a big wave to fabulous family daycare leaders in South Australia, and particularly Rebecca Haynes, who we've been working with very closely. And one final acknowledgement, because I know Prabhat will also shout out to some other super people that have been involved in his research that he's presenting, is also the president of ISCA, Katerina Plakatsi. So welcome, Katerina. It's nice to have you here from Greece, joining us as well. So we're going to tonight, as part of our presentation, to really explore as a collective set of presentations, which we hope, regardless of which area you're working in, whether you're in the university sector, the school sector, childcare, family daycare, we hope that our presentations will give you some insights in relation to equity and access through innovation. And collectively, we're going to be presenting some ideas which we think can connect really well, particularly in the present situation of COVID and all the continual up and down lockdowns that we have, where educators are needing to reach out to families. And because it's Science Week, it's a fabulous week in which we can share with you how we're doing some of this work in family homes to really bring forward with educators and with family members a love and a passion for STEM, because it has to start early, as Mandy said. So in my part of the presentation, which will be followed by Prabhat and then Sharon, and then I'll close at the end and hand back to Mandy for Q&A. But in my part of the presentation, I want to talk to you about the why, how, and what in relation to family daycare as our amazing champions of STEM who can make a real difference. And particularly, this is in keeping with, I'm just making sure we are moving forward. Okay, it's a tiny little one here. And in keeping forward with this, this idea of families and reaching out to families, I want to, first of all, begin with the idea of, and I think I might have missed a slide. Sorry, I'm just going to reverse. I must have pressed, there we go. Sorry about that. With equity and access for educators, changing the story. And one of the things I wanted to, first of all, say is in keeping with our previous presentations that we've had as part of our public lecture series coming from the Play Lab, is that we're delving into the work of Vygotsky yet again, and that's part of the why we, and you'll hear parts of that come through this presentation, as have done in previous presentations as well. But in particular, we need some of the concepts to help us with this really important work, because it's easy to learn new facts, as Vygotsky has said in the past, but it's so difficult to think about something we already know in a new way. And I know I've said this before, but it is, and that's what we're going to be trying to do tonight, is to be thinking about equity and access in a new way. And the way we're taking this forward is through this metaphor. And I'm drawing on the wonderful work that Sue Willis, when she was one of our few deans ago, leaders, and she talked very much about this idea of public transport all going into Melbourne. So all roads lead into Melbourne. If you're from Melbourne, you'll know exactly what we mean by that. And what, I'm just having some challenges here with the controls. If you live in this part of Melbourne and you want to go to this part of Melbourne, then it's quite a challenge, because you have to go into Melbourne and then out of Melbourne. And what we want to do is talk about this in a new way. So rather than catching up with the dominant view, what we want to do is look at alternative, creating new pathways, creating new for equity and access through innovation. And that's part of what we're seeking to bring forward in this presentation. And to take this one step further, we're looking at how do we work with educators to support bringing into family homes the love of STEM learning. And what I want to do is begin with this first part here which is in relation to the idea of what we know about the professional development of educators, early childhood educators, and reviewing the literature globally. There are 4 characteristics that come through, and this is part of what we are taking forward, and you can see aspects of it here, but I want to look specifically about recognising the unique practices of early childhood, because a lot of professional development research literature has always told us the best way to work with educators to bring STEM concepts into their toolkit is to create really rich professional development experiences. However, when we start to go deeper, we can start to see that actually the area that's unique about early childhood is that the people who turn up for professional development, they might have a degree in early childhood, they might have a certificate, they may be somebody who works in a team with minimal qualifications. So there is this diversity of people. They're not normalised around a degree person. And so when we then look further into this, and we start to think about what's unique about the family daycare educators, because we know that Certificate 3 qualifications is the minimum, that the general understandings about the uniqueness of this particular area of our profession is that they're isolated from their colleagues because they work in homes, and so there's not 2 educators there, like we have 2+ educators. We also know that there's this developmental range, 6 weeks to 6 years is fairly normal, and there is this diversity of children on different days, of different age groups, and so there is this complete challenge. And then there is the organisation of the play areas. Is it a family home? How do we bring living and education together? But then, interestingly too, is when we look at the empirical work that's been done in this area, it's actually really scarce and almost non-existent in relation to STEM. And there are mixed findings. So it's really urgent that we begin the process of being able to do research together. But what we do know is that it is positively associated, professional development is positively associated with quality, but there's not enough. So this takes us, so therefore it's very important for us to take this forward. So how do we build this partnership? And so that's what I'm going to share with you very quickly. And what we're going to be looking at is the very first part of our access and equity for family daycare educators, and what we did together as a team, and so that we can build the evidence together as part of our educational experiment, where researchers and educators, family daycare educators, work together to take forward a model of practice and professional development. And I'm going to share that with you now. So the first part that was really important in this professional development, and for those of you coming back to our Vygotsky friend, is that we know that the kind of practices that we want to in STEM, that we would like to see available and to children in family homes, it becomes very important for us in the first instance to make that available in the professional development. So what is it that's really important here? And so in the first phase of the work that we did, we looked at Conceptual PlayWorlds as our beautiful model of practice, and we introduced this and the actually phases of what the family daycare educators would participate in as part of their professional development. And important here was that this was a 1-hour session, then with the family daycare educators and our research team discussing what really matters. And I'm just trying to get the... Okay. And so from that, what we did in phase 2, that was very important, was to actually have 4 sessions of our storyteller actually modelling the intervention of the conceptual play world that through Zoom with the family daycare educators across a broad geography. And I'm going to share with you some examples of what that looked like. So we're going to look at this video clip, which is relatively short, where the story has already been read and now it's being told. And there's the imaginary situation of, and this is the story of Rosie the hen and the cheeky fox trying to catch Rosie. And here we see the farmyard that the hen goes around and the fox follows. And you can see in the family homes different examples of Rosie's farm. And what we'll hear Oriana do now is that she orients the children, because there's these 4 30-minute sessions that happen over a week. She orients them in this particular session to a plan view, and you'll see that she's in the aeroplane mode. And we're just going to look at a little snapshot of what this looks like.
Horse, can you see Rosie? Can you see the cows? Can you see? I'm flying over and I can see, some of the ducks around the pond, and I can see some sheep.
So this gives you a very, very quick snapshot of the actual, what it looks like on the Zoom technology to access for these teachers, educators to be accessing professional development through the practice of Oriana actually implementing a conceptual play world directly into the family home to bring about some STEM problems. Now, we're going to look at another session here. This is slightly longer, but it's absolutely worth listening to. This is the 2.5 minutes of Oriana setting up the problem with the children so that they have, then they can explore the STEM as part of what they do. And I'm just...
There's a phone call. Ring, ring, why don't you give me a call? Ring, ring, the happiest sound of them all. Ring, ring, I wonder who it could be. Ring, ring, I think it might be for you and for me. Oh, hello. Yes? Hey everyone, it's the cousins and they're planning. Oh, yes. They're planning to come to Rosie and visit her because Rosie is turning 3. She's turning 3. It's her 3rd birthday party. Yes, yes, you know how to get to the farm, but the farm is so big and there's so many things. There's a pond and there's haystacks. Yes, yes, yes. A mill and a fence and beehives and stables and you're scared you're going to get lost. Oh no. And you need a map? A map? Oh, maybe the children can help. Do you think the children might be able to help? I'll have to ask them. Can the children help? Would you be able to help everyone? Would you be able to help the cousins get to Rosie's birthday? What do you think? I can see some people nodding their heads.
And you could help them make a map to get to Rosie's birthday party. Yeah. So they don't get lost.
Cousins.
Yeah.
Children might be able to help, and they might be able to make a map. Yes, they're very, very excited. Yes. Okay, don't worry. We'll get onto it. We'll think about it. Okay. Thank you. Bye. Bye, cousins. Oh. The poor cousins, they want to get to Rosie's birthday party, but they're worried how they're going to find her on the farm.
So we can see here the example of setting up the problem.
There's a phone call.
Oops. And now we're going to have a quick look at some of the solutions here. We'll have a look at the video clip of the children's maps that they created further in the week, because the 30-minute sessions were really just the catalyst for all the things that could happen during the day. So let's have a look at this.
Play session last Thursday.
I think the fox is appearing. Can you tell the fox about your map? Oh, she's so excited. Oh, she's clapping her hands. Can you tell us about the map?
There, can you tell them about bits on the map?
Writing on maps.
You wrote them. What was that?
And the bees.
The bees.
The beehives.
What else was on the map? Yeah, the bees. What else? What was this piece?
Water.
Water, the pond.
The water. Yes, the pond.
Anything else on the map?
Zebras.
What was that one over there?
Bees.
Was that more bees? Or was that was
The bees.
Play session live.
So we had an example there of aspects of the professional development being practiced through the storyteller straight into the family home, where the children explored STEM concepts and brought them back to share. So this takes us to, so that was the second phase. The third phase then that was really important was actually about how to bring a level of consciousness about the kind of professional practices around STEM that the children and the family daycare educators were experiencing, and to enter into a discussion about what took place. And as part of that, we're going to have a look at some very quick examples of the next phase, which is where the educators and the researchers came back together again as part of the professional development. And we'll see that two quick things to mention here. One is that the educators were supported throughout that week and the following week after the storyteller had entered into the family home virtually. And what you can see examples of are this kind of email information that was being exchanged, in addition to the educators sending photos and making comments to the researchers. So you can see some suggestions and very, very explicit discussion about the prepositional language and what that is in relation to what they're doing. So these very important scientific concepts, STEM, in a STEM setting of mathematics, but also a plan view, were emerging all the way through this phase. But also what was important was in this phase three, was that there would be interesting dialogue through the reflections. And here's an example of Educator S talking about the STEM concepts are there, but normally I wouldn't go as far as this. We would do intentional teaching as is expected in the curriculum, but we wouldn't revisit the concepts so many times. And the re-looking at those STEM concepts as part of an embedded story was really important. This came through the comments that the educators were making. So they were really exploring this. And we see then Oriana, the storyteller, talking about the meaning of intentional teaching becoming clearer. As you said, there's a hook and an anchor to base it on, your conversations, and that it does allow for the balance between the adult-led and the child-led in a really meaningful and purposeful way. And then the response, the family daycare educator S says, it's really important to have intentional teaching. And this then moves forward to educator M, suggesting that it gave the children an angle about what they would like to do next, as well as being intentionally taught, and that there were things that could be expanded. There's no right or wrong way. So lots of discussions about what they had seen and experienced with the children through the previous phase of the implementation of this conceptual play world directly into the family home. And just to sort of wrap it up now, I'm just going to just share that some slides very quickly, where in phase 4, the educators and the researchers planned with those that wanted to take this further forward an additional conceptual play world, and those that participated chose the story of the rainbow fish. And as you see on the next slide, these are the photos that were sent back through. Because the educators did this on their own. There was no zooming in to tell the story, but the educators took this forward themselves, and you can see they've created an underworld scene in the family home. And then because we were supporting them through Facebook, private Facebook, the educators also posted what they were doing. And you can see here some very explicit conversations in their posts in relation to the concepts that they were exploring, which we were super excited to see. And this was very important then to bring us back for further reflections. And this is where we felt that this model that was co-constructed with the educators of providing an hour of professional development, then having the 4 sessions where they experienced this conceptual play world directly into the family home with the storyteller, then the discussions around what was actually happening during that week, followed by some planning through to the educators implementing their own, and then coming back for discussions about this. And what was really important, as you can see here, is that the educators in their reflection sessions talked about the kinds of questions the children were now asking. Does the fish ever come out of the water? I don't know if they can breathe out of water. So you can see, could the fish get lost? And then this sets up another investigation, so looking for the fish. Similarly, the educators were seeing that it was spilling over to everyday practices within the family daycare setting. So in character, the educator was the octopus sending messages, and the octopus was the wise person who knew everything. Even then, when they were not in the play world, she said the children wanted to know something. If they wanted to know something, they would say, "Shall we go under the stairs?" and ask the wise old octopus. So they were bringing, she said, parts of the play world into the normal everyday life of the family daycare setting. So we were really excited by this because it started to show us how important, if we go full circle back now, how important the characteristics of family daycare with this broad age group of children that are in a family daycare setting coming on different days. The family daycare educators came to theorise this by saying the simplicity of the story, important for family daycare. There is not a lot of words in it, so that was the books that they'd chosen, but there's a lot of action. Simplicity suited a lot of age groups, whether they were 2 or whether they were 4 or even maybe 18 months. And similarly, not too much was involved in the story, not too long, too short, just right. So the Goldilocks concept of it being just right for the younger and suiting and stretching the older children in the family daycare settings. So this was a very successful model that was developed with the family daycare educators. And so much so that unsolicited comments such as, "I can't spread conceptual play worlds enough. I've just been hanging out for tomorrow when all my kids are back and we can get back into it all again." And we've entered into a new phase of our research now, and to take us forward, we have our STEM champion, Stephanie Hoy, and we're going to take a look at a video of her now, presenting what she thinks about this whole approach.
Any early childcare educator will say, there's too much paperwork. This is minimal amount of paperwork and the bang for your buck is huge. So it takes hardly anything to pull a play world together and you will get massive amount of mileage out of it. I'm Stephanie Hoy and I'm a family daycare educator. I work in South Australia in a little town called Port Lincoln. I work from home and across a working week have 14 different children come to my house, and their age ranges from 6 weeks through to school age. The first one I did on my own was the rainbow fish. There's one fish that's got shiny silvery scales, and she thinks that she's beautiful, but she doesn't have any friends, and she wants to play with the other fish, but they want to have one of her scales. At the moment, I've got a lot of 3 to 4-year-olds that will go off to kindy next year. So that concept of sharing and being kind to each other, and sometimes you have to give away what you really want for things to work. So there was a lot of other underlying stuff going on in that story, apart from the STEM stuff. And so what happened in our play world was we take it in turns to be the rainbow fish, and whoever was the rainbow fish got shiny silver circles, and they had to give them out however they saw fit, but there was an odd number. Each child did it differently. Some kids, it was too hard for them, so they gave them all away. Some kids gave one to each person and hid the rest. One kid actually got scissors and wanted to cut them up so that would go evenly. So it was really interesting to see how their little minds processed it. So it's such a different teaching model. So they don't understand that I've got something that I intentionally want to teach them. They just love that I was playing with them, and it wasn't all about, no, you have to do what I say, and no, we can't do that. So they were able to throw ideas up and, oh, what if we do this? And what happens if we do this? And it was like, I don't know, let's find out. So they were really excited that they could be leading the grown-up. There was a massive social emotional connection with the kids and a massive learning there for them as well. The empathy that they developed for the characters, they were sad for the rainbow fish because the rainbow fish was so sad, and they were able to transfer what was happening in the play world, which might have only been like 20, 30 minutes in a day, but it was so engaging for them that they were talking about it constantly throughout the day when they were doing other activities. The reason I really liked this approach of the conceptual play worlds is you can introduce so many different topics into the play. It's not just like, oh, let's make a volcano. It's more than just the science stuff. That's going to be their world and their livelihood when they grow up. So it's the stuff that we should be really talking about to them when they're little.
So I'm back, and I hope you enjoyed listening to Stephanie, the passion and excitement. So that's the Innovating with Family Daycare Educators, giving equity and access to them through this remote professional development in a way that speaks directly to them. But how do we support access and equity to STEM for families generally? Prabhat's going to answer that question for us now. Over to you, Prabhat.
Thanks, Madeline. You never set up an easy question. So to answer this complex question, I would present some data and work we have done last year during the Melbourne lockdown, and also this year, in the beginning of this year. So it would be worth highlighting at this stage that 2 important elements of our work here was space and time. So we were always mindful of, we were trying to create a new collective digital space for families and children where they could come, have fun, play, hear stories, and learn new science concepts. And we were also mindful of the challenging times in which we were engaging in this educational experiment. So one of the other intentions around creating these innovative possibilities was also to reach out to the families who were finding it difficult to get best possible early care in these difficult circumstances. And our pre-existing collaboration with Playgroup Australia, especially Playgroup Victoria here in Victoria, was basically something which was central to our work on this. So before starting our work, one of the first things we did was to do a very detailed systematic review of what's already available and how playgroups basically support parents' participation or families' participation and support children's development in early years. So we did this systematic review of around 6,687 articles with a full text review of 56 articles. And our analysis shows that playgroups basically offer a lot of positive social outcomes for families. They support smoother transition for children to getting prepared for the first year of formal schooling. They also offer a lot of parenting confidence to families, especially the migrant families, about the demands, the parenting demands in Australian context. There were only few studies, basically, which were trying to see playgroups as a pedagogic space, and especially space where they can teach science concepts. So that was also something which came out very clearly from our study. But the positive part was that Playgroup offers a very interesting multicultural, multilingual space, and also offers possibility to reach out to the families which are difficult to reach. So we launched our work. Yeah. So we launched our work in collaboration with Playgroup, especially building on their already existing model, which is Home Life, a 30-minute session which they organize. And we organized a new model, which was basically based on our own model of practice, basically Conceptual PlayWorld. And we got enormous interest as soon as we advertised it. More than 130 families within few hours registered for participating in this. But given our logistical possibilities, we chose the first 15 families to start with, to start our work. And to give a sense of the diversity, the first group, basically, we had around 12 families, out of which 8 participated regularly throughout the session for 4 weeks. And they came from Chinese, Vietnamese, Indian, Spanish, Irish, and Australian backgrounds. 7 boys, 5 girls in the age range of 2 years and 11 months to 4 years, 9 months. And we did bi-weekly sessions for 4 weeks with them. Now, to create the foundations for this work, our theoretical principles were around this idea of building and using of common knowledge, the work of Professor Anne Edwards, where she asked for researchers' attention to build and use common knowledge. Common knowledge here meant making parents' reasons of participation in this play world explicit to us and also to them. We were also mindful of our roles as a play partners, explorers, and other pedagogic roles we were taking as in this educational experiment. And lastly, we were very, very mindful of the fact that we are not trying to impose or overwhelm parents and children with concepts, but rather use concepts in the service of play, which can amplify their play experiences. So the first thing we did was is basically trying to understand the social situation of development of these children, which is basically trying to understand their daily routines, their interests, what are their families' expectations of participating in these sessions, and also to share with them what it would entail in terms of participating in Conceptual PlayWorld. So it was a kind of creating these mutual space where we could share about what this particular model might look like, and also bring in their interests and perspectives into creating this space. Yeah. So, so at the first stage, basically, at the stage of understanding the social situation of development, a lot of our effort was largely around collaborating with families, and also collaboration within our PlayLab team, which is basically going back and carefully planning about how we can bring in families' everyday activities into our digital space. Now, the second stage was largely around sharing ways of participating and inhibiting conceptual PlayWorlds. And we were also basically just to inform the families about how this model looked like. We sent a small video of our storyteller, Oriana, introducing her, and also telling them about what are different aspects of the play world and how it will go over a period of 4 weeks. And secondly, the second phase was largely around these bi-weekly storytelling sessions, which was the most important and the central part of this research. And to basically, this was a space where children were coming together with their parents and co-experiencing the drama of the story. Also, the families were embodying and imitating expressions. And in this example, probably you would see that how they are participating and also supporting their children's.
You think, Isabel, the fox is going to catch a hen? Oh, there's a few people that think that. Let's see what happens. Flying up high. Uh-oh, smack. Can you do that? Uh-oh, smack. Oh, smack. Oh no, poor fox. He's hit his head against the rake. He put so much force onto the spikes and the handle went right up and oh no, hit him. Oh, poor fox. But where's Rosie? Rosie is just walking along, isn't she? She hasn't noticed. She hasn't noticed that the fox is behind her or that he's hurt himself. Great listening, everyone. Well done. Oh.
So what you see here is basically parents' participation and children's participating together in trying to create these situations for their children. Can't move my, yeah. After we have done these storytelling sessions, the second stage was also to offer possibilities for families to do something in their home setting, because we were doing these bi-weekly 30-minute sessions. So there was a huge possibility that their interest might dip, or they may not know what to do after the session is over. So we gave them detailed instructions in terms of how they can keep on engaging their children in around the same idea, around the same narrative of the story. So which included watching some YouTube videos together, doing origami arts, or also sharing some fact sheets about hen. And often these fact sheets or science fact sheets, basically, where the elder children in the family were also interested. So it became a kind of an activity where not just the child who was participating in the session, but also other children in the family were interested in participating in it. Now, the other important consideration here was creating these spaces for families to come back and share their experiences as well. And in this video, you will find how one of the families has brought some of their own play artifacts and way of storytelling, which is different from Oriana, but it's expression of the family in that space.
So we say,
Sorry, can't.
so we say this is Fox.
Yeah.
And this is Rosie.
Rosie.
Yeah. Yeah, we make a scenario. So we say this is Fox.
Yeah.
And this is Rosie.
Rosie.
Yeah. Yeah, we make a scenario. So, and so we this is our beehive. So Rosie can walk through underneath.
Oh.
And the fox jump on the wagon.
Ah, yes.
And here come the big angry bee.
Oh.
Oh.
And scared.
Away.
And chase the fox away. Terrific. I can see a happy smile there. That's wonderful. Well done.
Yeah. So at this stage, in fact, Oriana introduced the problem situation. Madeline, in her presentation, mentioned about the same storybook, but the problem which they were trying to work with was, map related to map and a plan view. But in this one, with the same story, we were trying to engage children in the concept of lever, basically simple machine. So it also shows that how the same storybook could be used for teaching or engaging children with different concepts. The next stage for us was to make the concept visible in the story and in trying to solve the problem as well. So in this particular example, which I'm presenting here, the effort of the storyteller was to introduce the problem where children basically had to work a get-home machine so that the fox could be sent back to the jungle. And they are basically helping Rosie the hen so that Rosie and her friend can create this get-home machine to send the fox back. And here you would see that how, while trying to solve the problem, number of engagements in the home setting were visible where children were using the concepts which were discussed in the play world and were also basically talking about it in their everyday play settings. So here's one.
Nico, which one is the beam? And the fulcrum? And where's the load? Where do you set us a load? This. Good job.
Fox. Where does the fox go? In the car. Can you show us where the lever is? The lever part? In the blue area. Yes. And where do you make the effort? Touch and show the effort place first. The yellow part. Are you ready to make the effort? Oops. Ready, steady, go. Oh, very good.
So this is in no way to show that they are learning the ideal science concepts, but just to say that these are the first stages where they are bringing in this vocabulary of science concept into their everyday play settings. The
Nico,
other
which one is the
interesting
beam?
observation which we could see is how these problem basically were solved by children, and also how the narrative basically was facilitated by these concepts.
Get those heads. You ready? Get set.
Oh!
Go down this end.
Done, Lily. That was a great example of a get-home machine. I can see that there was a beam and the fox was the load. A lever is a really simple machine that helps lift a heavy load. And I could see that the fox was being lifted with the effort. Well done. Great job, Lily. Let's all give Lily a double thumbs up for great thinking. Well done.
So this is also to highlight the fact that on the one hand, there was this narrative of the problem, which was being, playing out at the same time. As you heard, the educator was also making the concept, which is basically an important part of this creating display scenario, was made visible again and again by the educator in a language which is understandable by children. So that's basically brought our educational experiment to the end. And then we had conversation with the parents in a parents forum where they shared their experiences. So here's a small snippet of the parents talking about her experience of participating in the play world.
I think what it worked well, these were new concepts for my kid. So it was really interesting to see a 2.5-year-old little one trying to understand how it works. And as well, I do have a 7-year-old, and for him, these were new concepts as well. So he was actually interested in what did you do at playgroup today, and show me. And then I had to build a little get home machine for him too, so they can both play. So playing was learning. And I did like on Sunday that we went to the park and he was just sliding on and he said, look, I get home machine. So he associates this. And then he said like the fulcrum and the load, and it was nice to see him to express his understanding in a different setting. So that was good. I think that was a success, that he understood, even if it was for me, a complex concept for a little one. Challenges, well, for me, this is my case. We are bilingual, so we mostly speak Spanish at home. I think what it worked well, concept for a little one. Challenges, well, for me, this is my case. We are bilingual, so we mostly speak Spanish at home. And because my kid is with me, he is mostly Spanish spoken. So trying to follow Oriana on the story and everything was quite complicated because I was trying to translate and he was trying to follow the story as well as listening to me. So what I usually did is when you finish the playgroup, then I will try to explain what he did. So I guess that was challenging and a little bit frustrating for him as well.
Yeah, so this is to also show that there were challenges at the same time when this was really working. The multilingual context, Australian context, basically also presents us with the challenge of language sometimes, and also trying to think of the families when we are trying to think of this educational experiment in the context. Just to quickly, yeah. So on the one hand, parents were basically enjoying and enacting the drama together with the children. They were also working as a play partners, inquirers, and problem solvers with their children. And that brings us back to where I started, that we were basically making this effort to build and use common knowledge so that we can create these fantastic possibilities for children, and also to show to the families that there are other possible ways of engaging with children where they can be play partners, where they can have these different pedagogic positions in the play situations, and use concepts in the service of designing these very engaging play situations for children. Lastly, in a nutshell, this basically helps us to create a kind of a model of practice that brings families and children's motives, their teaching commitments of educators, and care for children together. The main highlight, if I can use the word of Caroline Panofsky, is to reduce the relational distance between the educator, children, and the parents. And that's what we were trying to basically work on in this experiment. This was largely our analysis, or my analysis, of what we have done. And more recently this year, we have done this fantastic conceptual play world called Gingerbread Jam. And here you would listen the parents' narrative. This video is something which we are launching today and has been sought by Baz Gerard. So thank you to him. And I think this is largely the parents' narrative of how this has, how they have experienced the conceptual play world.
Watching your child really enjoy themselves and learn at the same time, it was really exciting to see that. Hi, I'm Stacey.
And I'm Andy.
And we're parents of Clara, who's 17 months old.
And so did all the rest.
I was looking for things to do with Clara and activities and things to entertain us, because during lockdown things were pretty boring and quiet. And I needed some more imagination to get my play and activities going with Clara. So I was like, that's a great opportunity to learn something new and see what's going on in the academic world of play. I think Clara was one of the youngest, or maybe the youngest participant. I think we started the PlayWorld when she was maybe 14, 15 months, and she's really progressed and learned through that time. But also there were other kids of different ages, so all preschool.
Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm Gingerbread Jan.
At first I was a bit, I don't know what she's going to get out of this, and very quickly became apparent that she was taking in a lot more than I was aware of, and it was a huge surprise that she already understands how processes worked.
When do we know it's done, Clara?
I was really worried about sort of trying to teach Clara science, because when I was at school I was told I was going to fail science. The STEM concepts we were looking at was really simple and easy. It sounds scary, but it was just how to do measurements, so using cups or weighing ingredients. We're also looking at chemical reactions and how things change. You put these individual ingredients all together to make a dough, and then when you put things in the oven, the temperature causes that reaction and everything to change.
Yeah, it goes in there, doesn't it?
My reservations were how much time or how much effort I might need to put into planning and preparing. It wasn't actually a problem at all. All the things and props that we needed we already had. The horse is a bath toy. The chick is actually a little duck, the cow is out of a puzzle, and the river is my very nice scarf.
I think Stacey is an awesome mum and your imagination is phenomenal, and I don't know what it is, but I think sometimes with Clara I feel almost a bit of a mental block when it comes to thinking of things to play with. I kind of like it when there's like almost some clear instructions on an activity to do. I do find that myself a lot easier, so I can see that one of the benefits of this is that structure.
Playing with her rather than sort of just sitting to the side was really enjoyable, and yeah, it's definitely time for that every day.
To basically participate in this research, you can go onto our website and fill in an EOI form. If you want to suggest to a family or a friend, that will be great as well. Now moving to, that's one part of our research. Moving to the next set of things which we are planning to do in future. We are very close to doing some fantastic work in Royal Botanic Garden, which is largely around nature-based learning. And more, very soon we are going to launch another app, which is basically Conceptual PlayWorld for Families app, which can offer pre-designed Conceptual PlayWorld tools, which families could use basically to create Conceptual PlayWorlds in their home setting. And lastly, all this work basically would not have been possible without the support from the Playgroup Victoria team, especially Danny, Deb, Joe, and Nancy Lee, and Sanaya, who have consistently helped us throughout this work, and our emerging work with Royal Botanic Gardens, and our team here at PlayLab. And lastly, there's a lot more happening. I just presented a small snippet of research happening in Pillar 2, which is Families Pillar at Conceptual PlayLab. We have Susiang Yu, who is interested in basically understanding how infants and toddlers develop STEM concepts. Her work is fascinating. In case you want to know more about her work, you can write to us at conceptualplaylab@monash.edu. And Ha Dang's work, which is around spatial reasoning, especially for girls, spatial reasoning and gender disparities in spatial performances. This is a collaborative effort, collaborative supervision with Faculty of Engineering. And this is an amazing work as well. You can write to the same email address. And more recently, Sonia Netovic, who has joined us, and she's interested in STEM concept formation across cultural age periods in home settings. So we have all these fantastic researches happening in the PlayLab. And what I'm moving to now is the next segment where Sharon, one of our superstar PhD students, is going to talk to us about how can we create possibilities for children's STEM concept learning using social media. Sharon.
Sharon, are you there? We seem to have a technical problem. Prabhat, are you able to talk through Sharon's slides if she's not there?
Oh. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I think Sharon is basically engaging in this I can't do justice to Sharon's work, but Sharon is doing this fantastic work, which is around developing these amazing possible. Oh, Sharon is here. Can you?
Sorry, I don't know what happened then. Okay, so I'm back. Thank you, Prabhat. So what I'm going to be doing in my PhD research is I'm looking at using social media, the platform of Facebook, in creating a social media educational experiment with Conceptual PlayWorlds. So what I've done is I've reconceptualized what the Conceptual Play Lab have been using with their Conceptual PlayWorlds. So rather than a face-to-face research approach, it'll be on the social media platform. This provides a possibility of families, so I'll be working with families, and this provides a possibility of them using a range of devices to access digital content on the platform. So I've decided to go with Facebook, and we'll be working in private Facebook groups. So in using a social media platform of Facebook, I've had to develop a variety of digital content for the social media experiment, and also working on social media has meant, organising a posting schedule. So over a 4-week period, I'll be running Conceptual PlayWorlds for families. And what we'll be doing is that each day there'll be daily posts, and in the daily posts, we'll be able to look at the different aspects of the Conceptual Play World across the four-week period. So this enables me to work synchronously and also asynchronously with the families who are participating in the project. So over the 4 weeks, every day there'll be every day there'll be 2 posts. So this is just an example of the digital resources that I've actually developed, and this is introducing the book Fly to families in the who will be part of the Conceptual PlayWorld project for families. And in this story, it highlights we'll be able to work with the scientific concept of flight. And so we're hoping that with the digital content that's developed, that families will be able to create imaginary play situations that support STEM learning in relation to the concept of flight. Each day, this is an example of what will be posted in the morning. So each day there'll be a Facebook post in the morning and the afternoon. And in the morning, it's specifically for the families, for the parents and their caregivers and the children to engage in the different aspects of a conceptual play world. And in this, it will provide ideas. So this digital resources will provide ideas and suggestions. And it also provides the possibility of co-viewing together. And then from that, it initiates from there, they can plan and decide how they'll proceed with their imaginary play situations. Also, within the platform of Facebook, we have the possibility of the families sharing and their experience and explorations with not only myself, but also with each other. So it becomes a collaborative process. And as you can see, there's quite a range of activities. So in the afternoon, there'll be a post that will be specifically related to the practices, pedagogical practices of the conceptual play world. And these have been developed in digital videos, and these are to support families in implementing and developing their own conceptual play worlds in the home. So they're geared specifically to the parents or caregivers. And so lots of information, and with those posts, also lots of resources to support them in relation to the scientific concept of flight. So, I'll go back. So that's just a really brief snapshot. So I apologise for the difficulties, but that's a really brief snapshot of my research project. And I'll pass it back to Marilyn.
Thank you, Sharon. So if we could go to the next slide, please, because we're just going to wrap it all up and say thank you very, very much for listening to the set of presentations, and apologies again for the difficulties we had with moving the cursor. Not quite sure why, but we'll find out later. Just to say that collectively when we look at the different pathways, which is where we began, and finding and creating our own, next slide, please, Sharon, what we're essentially trying to do is give direct access to families in 3 different ways, as you saw through the different presentations. And there'll be many, many more models coming out of the research of that Prabhat's pillar is leading, pillar 2, which is where we really think, particularly in Science Week, how to create the conditions to support families to have these beautiful, rich STEM conversations at home. And we think that this is a really good beginning a very good way to begin this process and to take it forward with our educators and with our families. So now over to Mandy.
Thank you so much to Marilyn and to Prabhat and Sharon. I'm sure that everybody who's listening in at the moment and those people who are listening in afterwards will join with me in thanking you so much and for these excellent presentations that have given us some insights into the work of the Conceptual Play Lab. So impressive, really innovative, and so many opportunities for joining in across different families and different situations through the kinds of technology examples that you've shared. So fantastic. Thank you so much. And now it's the opportunity of the people in our audience to be able to interact with you through their questions and comments. So I'm going to invite you, now that you've just turned your videos off, I'm going to invite you to turn your videos back on so that our audience can see you as they ask questions. And hopefully there's lots of questions there sitting in the YouTube chat that Chantel and her team will be able to ask us through the panel. So I'm going to now hand over to Chantel, actually Grace, who has a question from the YouTube. Thanks, Grace.
Yeah, so the questions are really starting to fly in now. And the first question I've got is from Olga, which has actually been rather popular. I think a few people want to answer. So Olga's question is, how do parents and teachers know if kids learn/develop new scientific concepts? How do they evaluate/assess the PlayWorld intervention?
So I'm open to Sharon, Prabhat, Marilyn, any of you who'd like to talk about that issue of assessment and evaluation?
I would think that, like anything that we do in education, that assessment's always on educators' mind. So therefore, the sorts of observations that you would do, I mean, the assessment wouldn't be any different from what you would normally do. And you would be observing the way in which the children are using the concepts in their imagination, in play, and in creating imaginary play situations.
Thanks, Sharon.
Just to add to Sharon's answer, I think it might be worth going back to Vygotsky's argument, because a lot of our research is informed by Vygotsky's idea. I think that the answer probably which comes from the cultural historical theory is that we need to start thinking in terms of diagnostic assessment rather than thinking in terms of a symptomatic assessment. So what we are looking for is not something which has happened in the past, what has matured, but what we are looking at is basically a function which is maturing. So in these examples, which I was presenting in my presentation, what we were seeing is that children were basically starting to use the concept. So it's an emerging. So what you were seeing is a concept being emerging here. So they're using it in their everyday setting. So that's what you are basically trying to see, their use of those concepts in changing the relationship which they are having with their world in which they are inhibiting. So in some ways, so two parts of the answer basically. One is you have to stop looking at the matured function only, but rather also look at the maturing function. Two is that rather than looking at the symptomatic part of it, look at the diagnostic part of it, which basically mean that you have to look at child's age period at which the child is. You also have to look at what is the capacity which the child has to engage with a particular concept and where the child is heading. So the social situation in which this is happening is important. So you have to think of the collective rather than thinking about the individual. So that's the larger nutshell, I would say. One has to start thinking around assessment.
And just to round that off, with the family daycare educators, what was really important in our research was that because there's such a broad age span, so it's capturing the actions of the infants and toddlers to see how they become motivated towards what's going on. So they're starting to pay attention. And then the older children, the 6-year-olds, who are actually leading. So you've got this beautiful dynamic situation in family daycare settings where you've got these multi-age groups all exploring STEM, but in their own way. And it takes a lot of skill for the educators, but they're super good at it.
And we saw some lovely examples there through the videos that you showed about that kind of in the moment noticing that was happening by both the parents and the educators as well. Thanks. Chantel, do you have a question for us?
Yes, we do have quite a few questions. So one question we've got here is from Ramina, and they're asking, how is this research different from PBL or inquiry approach to teaching and learning?
I can start responding to that, and then I'll encourage my colleagues to. Problem-based learning has been around for a while, and it's pretty exciting, and so is inquiry-based learning. When you look at the conceptual play world model, because it begins with an imaginary situation, which is part of the narrative of the story, it means that you're creating, particularly for very young children, which is what we're talking about here, a space that's really rich, where problems can arise which need to be solved. And so it's important that the story and the drama of the story, because the children, they want to help Rosie the hen, or they want to go to the birthday party and help the cousins get there. The motive orientation, the excitement of wanting to solve these problems that arise in the story are so fitting within this period of the children's development, which is that their leading actions and activity is always to want to play, and the early childhood period. So a problem-based learning approach is in a sense embedded in this, but it's the narrative and the play that's really foregrounded, because that's what these infants, toddlers and preschoolers want to do. They want to play. They want to be Rosie. They want to be the fox, but they also want to go to the party. And so then to make the play richer, they've got to solve these problems. So as Prabhat said at the end of his presentation, the concepts, STEM concepts, serve the play. And that's just beautiful for this age period. Problem-based learning, the focus is on the problem, and the problem can be very rich. It can become a project. There can be an inquiry about learning about a concept, but the story is not the central bit, and the play is not the central bit. So this is the difference. So for older children whose leading activity is to want to focus on problems and learning because they're in school and they've got school problems they want to solve, those kinds of approaches are really appropriate. But for this very young period, we want to orient these children in homes, in playgroups, in childcare centres, in kindergarten, towards the excitement of STEM. And the way you keep that going is through the narrative of the story. So you don't solve the project like in problem-based learning, and I'm speaking simplistically there, you don't finish the inquiry, but you have the narrative and the play that means the children can go over and over and over the story and really live the characters and enjoy the STEM concepts, and over time deepen their understandings. But Prabhat and Sharon may wish to add to that.
think what you said is absolutely right, Marilyn. Just to maybe highlight what you have said, as we have shown in our presentations as well, that the concept is coming in service of play, which is not probably the case in the case of inquiry and the PBL model. I think the emotion bit is equally important, especially for early years, because children were able to engage with the drama of the story, which is basically trying to say then is that we are not trying to see learning as a kind of an activity base. So we are not trying to send packets of information and activities to children, but rather create a meaningful narrative in which children can participate and engage and feel that they are trying to solve a meaningful problem, personally meaningful problem for themselves. So that's where I think the difference or departure from the PBL and inquiry model is there.
Thanks. And over to our special question sources there, Chantel and Grace it is. Thank you, Grace.
Okay, so our next question is from Kathika. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Sorry if I'm not. So Kathika is wondering how we can engage parents who are generally disengaged and perhaps have several other children, as well as potentially minimal education themselves.
I can start, unless you, Prabhat, would you like
to? Go ahead, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. I think that the question's really interesting. One of the big celebrations in early childhood is that there is a diversity of qualifications, and I always see that as a plus, because in the way that we know that multi-age groups learn really well from each other, if we apply that principle to the idea that early childhood settings are made up of a range of people with different qualifications, then I can see exactly why publishers tell me that early childhood educators read, that they devour books, papers, they are so engaged and so in a space of learning. And they say that that's their market. That's where they make their money probably. But to take that back to your question about how to motivate parents then, I'll hand over to Prabhat. But I can say that with the family daycare educators, the parents, what we're learning in our research, and we're still doing the analysis of how this is flowing on into the families who are using the family daycare, it has been so positive. The feedback from the family daycare educators is that the concepts are spilling over, the narrative that they take with them, with the concept embedded, goes into these other homes, and the parents are saying, oh, our children are so excited. They have all these things to tell us when they come back home. And it's this, and that's also been exciting for the family daycare educators, because they see how motivated their children are to STEM learning in this way, and how their families of the children that they're educating and caring for are so motivated as well. But Prabhat, you're in a different research context. So how's it for you?
Yeah, I think I share Kartika's worry, and I quite understand the challenge which she's trying to put forward. There was something we were also thinking around 2 years back when we were planning these educational experiments. I think we were not trying to see children as like an individual child, but rather see it in the context of the family. So that was the first basic thing which we were trying to work with. So we were trying to think of a situation where if there are 3 children or 2 children in the family, how designing this conceptual playworld is going to basically engage the entire family rather than just the child. Marilyn, you can remember a number of conversations we had in the past. We were often been saying that we are not just creating narrative just for a child to learn, but rather something which is engaging for the parent as well. And that's what you hear from one of the anecdotes I shared from the parents' narrative, where she's saying that it is not just her child who is 2-year-old was engaged, but also one who is 7-year-old was engaged and want to know something else around the same idea. So the concept of simple machine, children who are 2-year-old or 3-year-old understand or engage with in a different way than a child who is 7 years. So that kind of relationship is what our model basically offers. So our effort is largely not to think of a individual child, but rather think of a family setup and how can we basically create those possibilities for the entire family.
Great, thank you. That's really Marilyn. Did you want to add something there? I just noticed.
Yeah, just to say that the excitement of the children is what engages the parents.
Yeah. And I'm also wondering, Sharon, then does that connect into the project that you're doing with social media? And I mean, you might not be in the stage of data collection yet. I'm not sure, but it seems like the social media aspect could be a way to engage parents too.
Well, the thing being is that everyone has a digital device in their hands. And so I think it's also about the access to materials. And what we do know is that that for children that are from disadvantaged backgrounds, I only know through my own experience as an educator before moving into research, is that is access to text, access to books. And so I think that this provides, like moving on into the digital space, provides greater access because people do have digital devices in their hands. And that is right across our society and communities.
Great, thank you. So we are coming up to time, but I think we've got opportunity for one more question. If Chantel or Grace, you'd like to roll that onto the panel.
Thanks, Mandy. We do have one more question, and it's sort of a two-part question. So with Lizzie, she's asking, are conceptual play worlds the same as story tables, or are story tables just one type of conceptual play world? And the second part of that is from Bong, asking about, has your team tried leading the situation in a way, in a different way other than stories?
Okay, so you're getting 4 questions there for the price of 1. So story tables and leading. Marilyn, would you like to lead off on it?
I actually don't know what a story table is. I don't know whether Sharon does or Prabhat. It's not something I've heard of before, so I'm really interested to find out about that. What I can say is that we, in the work that led up to our conceptual play world model, where we did a lot of research, one of the things we found was that the story, the play world itself, because the original model came from Gunilla Lindqvist in Sweden, and that particular model wasn't to bring in STEM concepts; it was to bring in the drama, the excitement, to go on adventures, and because early childhood educators are superb planners of children's development and really good observers of children's development, what we wanted to do was work with educators to come up with a model, which is what we came up with, the conceptual play world model, that spoke to the strengths of early childhood educators and recognised the developmental period, cultural developmental period that is early childhood, which is about play being the leading activity. So by bringing, and then we've got of course, we've had since 2009, the concept of intentional teaching. And so when you bring all of that together, we needed to develop a model. And so the conceptual play world model was the story, which creates the narrative, the imaginary situation, which is where the imaginary play happens, and the storying is developed through the children's play further, where the STEM concepts come in. So the model is quite unique from that point of view, but it really builds on teacher strengths and what we already know about children's development, plus the original work of Gunilla Lindqvist. So I don't know about story tables, but I'd like to learn. Prabhat and Sharon, would you like to respond?
Well, I'm not sure what story tables, other than a table that has stories and the aspect of resources that support the stories. So no, but what you've said there, Marilyn, is a great example of what the conceptual play world is.
Yeah, I haven't heard the story tables as well. Just to respond to the second question we have got there, have we worked on anything other than stories? As Marilyn mentioned, story is something which is central to developing conceptual play world. But some of the work we are doing at the Play Lab, especially the work I mentioned of Ha Dang, where she is basically working on developing spatial games. So that's also an area which we are basically exploring and trying to understand how can we support children's spatial reasoning capabilities in early years.
Thanks, Prabhat. And I'm sure there are many, many more questions and lots of fantastic talk that's happening on Twitter there. Sorry, on the YouTube. I'm sure it's on Twitter as well. And in fact, I was going to say, if you would like to keep up with what is going on with the Conceptual Play Lab, and who wouldn't, because this is incredibly inspiring work that's been shared tonight, we have shared a range of resources with you. You can join in through social media or through the website. Just before you jump into your Get Home machines, I'd like you all just to have a look here of a new course. Obviously, you know, inspired by the kind of work that's been talked about tonight, we have a graduate diploma in early childhood education for diploma qualified early childhood educators. And you can see there's some information that might be helpful, including the link to be able to register your interest. Maybe there's somebody that you know who you could follow up and say, hey, this would be a great idea for you too. So thank you. And you can hear thunderous virtual applause, I'm sure, all around.